Well, it certainly was a day of joy yesterday to see our youngest children back at school, running around outside, and once again that unique magical sound of children at play in the grounds. But this morning, somehow, somehow this morning seems darker. None of us can ignore the events in America. From news reports, it appears that the country is in flames, and many of its people, not just African Americans, but all decent people, are enraged by the widely circulated video of the arrest of a black man, George Floyd, which resulted in his death with a policeman's knee on his neck. And these riots in America are not about only perceptions of police brutality, but about centuries of injustice towards African Americans. It is a volatile situation. Loss of trust in the police, unemployment, coronavirus, incidentally, which affects disproportionately the African American community. That great man, Martin Luther King, one of the great users of the English language, in a widely circulated 1967 interview, makes the eloquent point that America freed the slaves in 1863 through the Emancipation Proclamation of Abraham Lincoln, but gave the slaves no land and nothing in reality, as a matter of fact, to get started on. And at the same time, America was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant there was a willingness to give the white peasants from Europe an economic base, and yet it refused to give its black peasants from Africa, who had come involuntarily in chains and had worked free for 244 years, any kind of economic base. Many black Americans feel nothing has changed, are incandescent with rage. In terms of pure data, housing, levels of income, and so on, inequality is off the charts, and it has to be dealt with. But it can only be dealt with by an empathetic leader. The American president, according to Sky News, told his governors, you have to meet violence with violence. You have to dominate. If you don't dominate, you're wasting your time. They're going to run over you. You have to dominate. You have to arrest people. You have to put them in jail for 10 years. Well, we all need to ask ourselves, what kind of leaders do we want? Now, in the West, anyone can decide to be a leader. One of you listening right now may already have your first thoughts of, I'd like to go into politics. I'd like to make the world a better place. And who knows? Perhaps one of you listening to this assembly may grow up to become a president or a prime minister. But how do we develop great leaders? It is only through our education. This is where the French concept of éducation is so much broader than the Anglo-Saxon use of the word education. In France, éducation is how you speak to people, it's how you enter a room, it's how you hold your knife and fork. And sadly, this country, it's too often associated with book learning and passing exams. But however we define it, our education is responsible for the kinds of people we produce as leaders, and indeed the kinds of people who vote for them. Yesterday, I suggested that the current pandemic brings into focus what is truly important. And really, it's in terms of our education to develop the kind of mind which can adapt to change, to stress, and to uncertainty. But today, looking at the depressing events in America, we ask ourselves in near despair how one person can have such enmity and disregard for another based only on his background, his cultural heritage, his race. Perhaps our whole global education needs to be designed to ensure that we're all doing GCSEs in empathy and in basic decency. And I don't know, special needs or learning support. Maybe we need this for those who display a lack of empathy or kindness, and not for those who, I don't know, struggle with their spelling. Maybe we have it all wrong. If there is one word I find myself returning to again and again, it is kindness. And it poses the question, how do people speak about you? Do they say, oh, she's got a really expensive racing bike, or he lives in such a beautiful house? What do you really want people to say about you? What will be your legacy? And surely it will be, she is such a kind person. Kindness is not weakness. It is the hallmark of what makes us human and decent. It's what makes us stop by the roadside when we see an injured bird to help it, scoop up the bird and take it to the vet. When I was little, my mother did this, and I think I learnt more from that incident than anything I learnt at school. Kindness doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. Always we need to be aware of where our responsibility ends and someone else's begins. And sometimes one has to say no, but even no, one can say and mean kindly. Let us today reflect on the values that matter most and on the kind of world we all want to live in. And remember, if there are aspects of the world that you don't like, you can in fact do something about it by reading, by becoming informed, by taking on opportunities to speak and to lead at school and elsewhere. And who knows, one day, to become a political leader yourself, to influence others, and to effect change. Have a good day.